The rain pounded violently against the window of the roadside diner that night, isolating the small establishment from the rest of the world. Elena was there, hunched over, clutching the phone as if it were a grenade about to explode. On the other end of the line, the voice of her ex-husband's lawyer, Mr. Henderson, sounded cold and impersonal, driving every word like a nail into the coffin of her hope. Hello, beautiful souls. Welcome to Soul Tales. Before we dive into today's incredible story, I want to know, where are you watching from right now? Drop your city or country in the comments below. And hey, if you haven't subscribed yet, what are you waiting for? Hit that subscribe button and join our family of believers in second chances. Trust me, you don't want to miss the stories we share here. Now, back to the story of a desperate mother who needs to find a husband and a home within 14 hours, or lose her daughter forever. What happens next will prove that sometimes miracles come from the most unexpected places. It isn't about money, Elena. It's about stability. Judge Harrison was immovable in today's preliminary hearing. If you don't have a permanent roof over your head and a stable family structure to present by noon tomorrow, Lily comes with us to the mansion. You have exactly 14 hours. No house, no husband, no daughter. End of story. The call ended with a dry click. Elena slowly pulled the phone away, feeling the blood freeze in her veins. She looked out at the dark parking lot where her old car was parked under the pouring rain, filled with blankets in the back seat. That was her home. That was the future she had to offer. The pain was so sharp she couldn't contain it. Elena didn't scream in anger. She crumbled. She leaned her forehead against the cold Formica counter and began to cry, a convulsive, painful sob that shook her shoulders. Between sobs, she let out the sentence that had been trapped in her throat, speaking loud enough only for the universe to hear her plea. My God, I need a miracle. I need a husband and a house by tomorrow, or I'm going to lose my little girl. Elena's miracle was right next to her, but she didn't know it yet. Do you believe that fate puts the right people in our path during our hardest moments? If so, drop a like and make sure you're subscribed. Get your tissues ready, because what this stranger is about to do will restore your faith in humanity. Watch until the end to see the twist in the courtroom that will leave you speechless. The diner was quiet, but at table number 4, those words hit Ethan like a physical punch. He was there with his 5-year-old daughter, Sophie, trying to have dinner after another exhausting day in construction. Ethan was a strong man with calloused hands and kind eyes that carried the sadness of someone who had already lost a lot in life. When he heard Elena's crying and understood what was at stake, a mother about to be separated from her daughter, his protective instinct triggered immediately. He looked at his own daughter, Sophie, who was distracted, playing with her French fries, and imagined the unbearable pain of being separated from her. He knew he couldn't just sit there watching. He needed to act because it was the right thing to do. Ethan wiped his hands on a napkin, stood up calmly, and walked to the counter. His firm steps stopped beside Elena. With a gentle gesture, he placed a $20 bill next to her hand, not as charity, but as a way to get her attention. Hey, he said in a deep and comforting voice. Save those tears. No mother should have to cry like that. Elena lifted her head with a start, her eyes red and swollen, and tried to compose herself quickly, embarrassed to have been seen in that state. I'm sorry. I'm just leaving. I didn't mean to bother anyone. You're not bothering anyone, Ethan replied, keeping his tone gentle but firm. I couldn't help but overhear. You said you need a house and a family to show a judge tomorrow so you don't lose your daughter. Is that right? Elena hesitated, defensive, hugging her purse like a shield. That's none of your business. I don't know who you are, but I don't need charity. Ethan smiled slightly, an honest smile that disarmed the tension. He saw the pride in her eyes and decided he wouldn't humiliate her by offering pure charity. He would give her a mission so they would be on equal ground. It's not charity, Ethan said, leaning in a little closer so his voice wouldn't travel across the room. I have a big house in the suburbs just a few miles from here. 3 bedrooms, a fenced yard, everything a family court judge likes to see in a report. I live there alone with my daughter, and honestly, we have plenty of room. I can help you with this hearing. You need a husband and an address. Consider it done. Elena looked at him, stunned, trying to find the catch, the hidden trick. Why would you do this? You don't even know me. Nobody does anything for anyone for free these days. That was when Ethan looked back at table number 4, where little Sophie had just knocked over the ketchup bottle, staining her hands, the table, and her new dress with a giant red spot. The girl looked at her father with wide eyes that said, "I messed up." Ethan let out a short laugh and turned back to Elena, using the moment to break the ice. "Look, I do it anyway because no child deserves to be away from their mother. But since we're doing this, if you could give me a hand over there," he pointed to the ketchup mess, "I'd appreciate it. I'm great at framing walls and building roofs, but I'm a complete disaster at getting ketchup stains out of princess dresses. Let's call it a fair trade. I will give you the house and the name. You help me not go crazy with that mess." Elena looked at the messy little girl, then at the kind man in front of her. For the first time in months, the persistent cold in her stomach seemed to fade. She felt hope, but she was also a mother who lived on the streets, and caution was her second skin, the only mechanism that kept her alive. She wiped her face with the back of her hand and looked Ethan in the eyes. "Seriously, are you being serious? Because I can't play games with my daughter's life. If this is some kind of cruel joke, I'd rather stay in the car." Ethan reached out his hand, ignoring the work grime on his shirt, his eyes conveying a sincerity that cannot be faked. "I have never been more serious in my life." Elena took a deep breath, making the riskiest decision of her existence, but keeping her guard up. "All right, I'll help with the dress, but as for going to your house, I'm driving my own car, following you. And before we take one step out of this Jerry's, I'm going to take a photo of your license plate and your driver's license. I'm sending it to my sister right now with your location. If you're some kind of crazy person, the police will know exactly where to look for me." Ethan wasn't offended. On the contrary, he nodded with respect, pulling his wallet out and handing it to her. "Fair enough. You're a good mother, Elena. Very careful. Take whatever photos you need. Let's do this the right way." The trip to Ethan's house was a 10-minute drive that felt like it lasted hours. Elena's old Honda followed his pickup truck through the curtain of rain. When they arrived at house number 452, a beautiful American colonial-style residence with a wide porch, Elena felt a knot of anxiety and relief. As they entered, the reality of Ethan's life became clear. It wasn't a dirty house in terms of hygiene, but it was a portrait of male loneliness. There were piles of clean laundry on the sofa, waiting to be folded for weeks. Toys scattered across the living room like landmines and empty pizza boxes on the granite kitchen counter. Ethan turned on the light and scratched the back of his neck, visibly embarrassed. "Welcome. Sorry about the mess. Since my wife Sarah passed away, I try to keep the lights on and Sophie fed, but sometimes work and solo parenting get the best of me. I make a living building homes for others, but I forgot how to take care of my own." Elena looked around with a clinical eye. She didn't see the mess as a problem. She saw it as a purpose. She saw a house that needed care as much as she needed security. She saw her daughter Lily step out from behind her legs and run shyly over to Sophie. And within a few seconds, the two of them began laughing at the ketchup stain. Elena took off her coat, feeling a new and electric determination run through her veins. "It's perfect, Ethan," she said, truly smiling for the first time in years. "We have 12 hours before that hearing. We are going to transform this place from top to bottom. No one is sleeping in this house until this place looks like the home of the happiest, most organized family in America." Ethan let out a sigh of relief, so deep his shoulders dropped 2 inches. "Let's get to work," he replied, already grabbing trash bags. The front door closed, locking the storm and the fear outside. Elena felt the weight of the world diminish as the warmth of the house's heating system enveloped her. For the first time in weeks, she didn't hear the sound of rain hitting the cold metal roof of the car. She heard only the comforting hum of the refrigerator and the rhythmic tick-tock of an old clock on the living room wall. Ethan didn't waste time with small talk. He walked to the hallway closet, pulled out 2 sets of clean white sheets that smelled like fabric softener and soft pillows, and signaled toward the upstairs. "That is the guest room," he indicated. "The girls can stay there." While Elena bathed the children, hearing Sophie and Lily's laughter echo off the bathroom tiles, Ethan transformed downstairs. He moved with the agility of someone used to dealing with deadlines on construction sites. When Elena came down, she found the living room unrecognizable. The pizza boxes were gone, the toys were organized in bins, and the dining table was clean. Ethan was in the kitchen, focused on brewing coffee, so strong the aroma filled the house. He handed a steaming mug to her, and when their hands touched for a brief second, Elena noticed he was just as nervous as she was. "Coffee is going to be our best friend until the sun comes up," Ethan commented, forcing a smile. He pointed to the pile of clothes on the sofa. Without saying a word, the two of them sat side by side and began folding every piece. Elena watched his hands. They were hands that knew the weight of a hammer. But now they folded a tiny dress with a delicacy that was almost poetic. For 2 hours, they worked in sync. Shirt by shirt, sock by sock, they were silently aligning two lives that until a few hours ago were worlds apart. Folding those clothes wasn't just a domestic duty. It was the first brick of the lie they needed to make real. At 3 in the morning, exhaustion began to take its toll. But the fear of the courtroom was a more powerful fuel. They sat at the kitchen table with a notepad and 2 pens. "Greg isn't just going to look at the house, Elena. He's going to try to unmask us in front of the judge," Ethan warned, his voice husky. "He's going to ask intimate things, things only a couple living under the same roof would know." Elena nodded, ready to memorize every detail. "Understood. Let's do this. What's your side of the bed?" Ethan rubbed his tired eyes. "Left. Always the left, and I drink my coffee black. No sugar at all. I hate sweets first thing in the morning." Elena wrote quickly. "My favorite color is teal, not just plain blue, and Lily has a severe peanut allergy. Never forget that." "If the judge asks what we had for dinner last night to celebrate our union," Ethan thought fast, "tell him I made lasagna. It's the only thing my mother taught me how to cook right before she passed. Even though we had grilled cheese today, for the court, we are the Sunday lasagna couple." Elena let out a short laugh, the first in a very long time, but Ethan suddenly turned serious. "Elena, if they ask how long we've been together, we can't tell the truth. Judge Harrison prizes stability. If he knows we met today, he'll think you're desperate, and I'm a predator. We'll say we've been together for almost 6 months, meeting at the diner where you work, that we took it slow because of the girls, but the eviction accelerated our decision to move in together to give Lily security. It's a story that makes sense. It's human." Elena looked at him, admired by his mental clarity at 4 in the morning. "You've thought of everything," she whispered. "If you're still watching, drop a comment below telling us if you'd take this risk to save someone you just met. And don't forget to subscribe. This story is about to get even more intense." The sun rose in shades of gray over the concrete building of the family court. The air conditioning in the hallway was freezing, contrasting with the cold sweat on the palms of Elena's hands. She smoothed her best dress, a simple piece she had tried to unwrinkle as much as possible. Ethan was by her side, tucked into a gray suit that seemed a bit too tight in his broad builder shoulders. He wasn't a man of sweet words, but the way he positioned himself between Elena and the courtroom door like an oak shield told her everything she needed to know. Inside, Greg was already waiting. Her ex-husband looked like a shark in shallow waters, wearing an Italian suit that probably cost more than Elena's car. He was laughing with his lawyer, overflowing with arrogant confidence. Seeing Elena enter, his smile turned into a look of pure venom. He barely registered Ethan's presence, assuming he was just some acquaintance or irrelevant witness. Judge Harrison, a man with a stern face and eyes that seemed to read souls, banged the gavel. "Custody of Lily Thompson. Mr. Gregg, you claim housing negligence. The floor is yours." Gregg stood up with the elegance of a predator. "Your Honor, the facts are painful. Elena Thompson is homeless. She is living inside a Honda Civic with a 6-year-old child. I have photos. I have testimonies." He threw an envelope onto the judge's desk. "My daughter is being raised in gas station parking lots. I, on the other hand, offer a mansion, stability, and the best private education. The choice is a matter of basic safety." Elena felt the floor disappear beneath her feet. The humiliation was public, raw, and violent. But before Greg could finish his victory speech, Ethan stood up. The sound of the chair dragging on the wooden floor caught everyone's attention. "That's a lie, Your Honor," Ethan said, his voice resonating with a natural authority that didn't need shouting. Greg spun on his heels, laughing. "And who are you?" "Her driver." "My name is Ethan Miller, owner of Miller Construction," he replied, ignoring Greg and speaking directly to the judge. "And Elena doesn't live in a car. She lives with me in my house at 452 Oak Street. Lily has her own room painted, yellow with a real bed and a closet full of clean clothes. She slept there last night, safe, warm, and loved." The courtroom plunged into absolute silence. Greg turned red with fury. "This is a farce. They met yesterday." Ethan stayed calm, remembering the story they created in the early hours. "No, Mr. Gregg. We've been together for months. We planned to take it slow, but given the difficulties Elena faced, we decided it was time to unite our family under one roof. I will not allow you to use her temporary poverty as a weapon to take a daughter from her mother." Judge Harrison looked Ethan up and down. He saw the callous hands, the posture of someone who doesn't fear hard work, and the truth in his eyes. "I will grant 30 days of shared provisional custody under the supervision of social services," the judge said. "If in 30 days this home proves to be a stable environment, we will keep custody with the mother. If there is any sign of fraud, the child goes to the father. Do we understand each other?" Greg hissed at Ethan on the way out. 30 days, Miller. That's how long it takes me to destroy your little theater." Ethan just held Elena's hand firmly and replied, "Give it your best shot, Greg." The first few days after the hearing were marked by a cautious silence, an adaptation period where every step taken inside the house at 452 Oak Street felt like a rehearsal for a high-stakes performance. Elena moved through the rooms like a guest who feared leaving marks on the carpet. She cleaned counters that were already clean and organized the pantry 3 times a day just to keep her hands busy and her mind away from the invisible timer Greg had started. Ethan, for his part, tried to balance the weight of his construction company with the new and vibrant reality of having 3 female voices filling the void of his residence. He would come home from work exhausted, his boots covered in mud, and stop at the entrance, inhaling the scent of basil and fabric softener that now replaced the smell of dust and loneliness. But time, that great weaver, began to turn the forced coexistence into something organic. The change didn't come in big speeches, but in the small details of an ordinary Tuesday. It happened when Ethan found Elena sitting on the living room floor, surrounded by colorful books, teaching Sophie how to tie her own shoes. It was a task that Ethan, with his limited patience and thick carpenter's fingers, had never been able to complete without the girl ending up in tears of frustration. He stopped in the doorway, watching Elena guide Sophie's small hands making bunny ears with the laces. When the bow finally formed, Sophie let out a cry of joy, and Lily, Elena's daughter, started jumping beside them, celebrating the new sister's victory. Ethan felt a lump in his throat. The house was no longer just a structure of wood and brick. It was gaining a soul. It also happened the following Saturday, under the pale morning sun. Elena looked out the kitchen window and saw Ethan in the backyard, leaning over Lily's old bicycle that had a broken chain for months. He wasn't just fixing the part. He was explaining to the girl with infinite calmness how the gears worked. Lily looked at him with an admiration Elena hadn't seen in her daughter for a long time. When the bike finally came back to life and Lily rode off across the lawn, screaming with happiness, Ethan wiped his grease-stained hands on his pants and looked at Elena through the glass. No words were spoken, just a nod of the head. But there, in that simple gesture, Elena realized that Ethan wasn't doing this for the judge. He was doing it for them. The girls were the bridge that allowed the adults to cross the abyss of distrust. Sophie and Lily didn't know about lawyers, 30-day deadlines, or convenience agreements. To them, the world had become a place where there was always someone to play hide-and-seek or to tell stories before bed. Seeing that sisterhood flourish forced Elena and Ethan to lower their guard. The dinners, once tense, turned into moments of sharing. Ethan started telling stories about the bridges he built, and Elena spoke about the dreams she had of going back to school for nursing. The intimacy, however, brought the open wound of fear to the surface. In the third week, Elena's terror overflowed in the middle of the night. Ethan was woken up by the muffled sound of sobbing coming from the guest room. He ran down the hallway, his heart pounding against his ribs, and found Elena sitting on the bed, hugging her knees, trembling as if she were in a blizzard. She had a recurring nightmare. The bailiff tearing Lily from her arms while Greg's face smirked in the shadows. Ethan sat on the edge of the mattress, keeping a respectful distance, but offering his presence as an anchor in a stormy sea. "I'm not going to let that happen," Ethan said, his voice low and firm like the sound of an ancient tree. Elena looked at him, tears glistening under the moonlight. "We're lying to the government, Ethan. I'm a waitress with no place to go, and you're a stranger who felt sorry for me. Greg has private investigators. He has money. He's going to find out that all of this is a theater." Ethan reached out and for the first time touched her face, wiping away a tear with his rough thumb. "It's not a theater, Elena. I saw you take care of my daughter. I saw you turn this house into a home in less than a month. Greg might have money, but he never had what we have here. We are two broken people who decided not to shatter alone. This is more real than anything he has ever built." That night, the alliance between them stopped being a survival contract and became a promise of mutual protection. However, the outside world did not have the same compassion. With only 48 hours left until the final hearing, the doorbell rang with aggressive persistence. Ethan opened the door and came face to face with Greg. The ex-husband was impeccable in his wool overcoat, but his smile was loaded with venom. He didn't wait for an invitation. He simply threw a thick manila envelope against Ethan's chest. "Nice paperwork, Miller," Greg hissed. "But I dug deep. I found the collection lawsuits against your construction company from last year. 3 cement suppliers suing you for late payments. And Elena, I found out she was fired for unexcused absences. Judge Harrison loves to talk about morality and stability. How do you think he's going to react when he finds out the town hero is broke and the model mother is an unstable employee?" Greg stepped closer, the breath of mint and arrogance hitting Ethan's face. "I'm giving you a way out. Elena signs the custody waiver right now. I will take Lily tomorrow without a scandal, and I won't show these papers to the judge. You keep your reputation intact, and she doesn't go to jail for fraud. You have until tomorrow morning." Greg turned his back, walking through the light rain to his luxury car. Elena, who heard everything from the kitchen, felt the floor vanish. She picked up the papers, seeing the amounts of Ethan's debts and her own termination letters. "He's going to destroy you because of me," she whispered, her voice lifeless. "Ethan, it's over. I can't let him pull you down to the bottom with me. I'm going to sign. I'm going to give up my daughter." Ethan snatched the papers from her hand and tore them in half with a violent motion. His eyes sparkled with cold fury. "He thinks he knows me because he read a bank statement," Ethan said, his voice vibrating with determination. "He thinks your life is summed up by a time card. He made the worst mistake of his life, Elena. He came to my house to threaten my family. We are not going to surrender. We're going to that courtroom, and we're going to show him that the truth doesn't fit inside a manila envelope. Wipe your face. We have a battle to win." The morning of the final judgment dawned under a thick fog that seemed to suffocate the city. The family court was a building of concrete and authority, a place where lives were decided with dry hammer strikes. Elena wore the same blue dress from the first hearing, but her posture was different. There was no longer the curve of defeat in her shoulders. Ethan walked beside her, his gray suit now looking like a suit of armor. In the backseat of the car, Lily and Sophie held each other's hands, a silent promise of sisterhood that no judge could cancel. As they entered the room, the tension was almost physical. Greg was sitting with his lawyers, exuding the confidence of someone who already feels victorious. He didn't even look at Elena, keeping his eyes fixed on Judge Harrison, who entered the room with a stern face, his black robe weighing heavily on his shoulders. "We're here for the final sentencing," the judge declared. "Mr. Gregg, you claim to have critical evidence of instability. Present it." Greg stood up with the calmness of an executioner. He presented the documents about Ethan's debts and Elena's terminations, painting a portrait of financial chaos and disguised irresponsibility. Your Honor, what we see here is a sandcastle. Mr. Miller is in financial difficulty, and Mrs. Alina is unable to keep a job. They created a facade to deceive this court. My daughter deserves the security of my mansion, not the uncertainty of a house about to be foreclosed. He placed the papers on the judge's desk with a thud that echoed like a verdict. Judge Harrison reviewed the documents, his expression becoming increasingly dark. He looked at Ethan with deep disappointment. Mr. Miller, what do you have to say about this? You presented us with a picture of solidity that does not seem to match these records. Ethan stood up. He didn't use the jargon of lawyers. He walked to the center of the room and in front of everyone held out his hands. Big, rough hands marked by years of brutal work with small scars from nails and saw cuts that would never fully heal. Yes, Your Honor, Ethan began, his voice filling the courtroom with honest strength. My hands are dirty. Last year was the hardest of my life. The cost of materials went up, contracts were canceled. I had to choose between paying for the asphalt of a job or keeping the mortgage on the house where my daughter sleeps. I chose the house. And do you know how I paid those debts that Mr. Gregg is using to humiliate me? I worked 16 hours a day. I carried the cement myself. I nailed the roofs myself. Ethan reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a wad of original receipts, crumpled and stained with sweat. He placed them before the judge. Here are the proofs of payment for every single one of those debts. I paid the last one last Friday. The government system might be slow, but my character is not. I am not a man of perfect paperwork, Your Honor. I am a man of work. And Elena. He paused, looking at her with a pride that made Elena's heart leap. She wasn't fired out of laziness. She was fired because when Lily had a fever or when Sophie needed someone on the first day of school, she was there. She lost her job so she wouldn't lose the essence of being a mother. Mr. Gregg calls that instability. I call it unconditional love. Gregg interrupted, his voice loaded with venom. This is theater. They barely know each other. It's a fraud of coexistence. Ethan smiled, the smile of someone who knows the truth in his bones. You say you know Lily, Gregg. So tell me, what is the name of the doll she won't let go of when she sleeps? What is her favorite color when she draws the sky? What is the name of the teacher she admires so much? Gregg stuttered, looking for answers in his papers. But there was no data about a child's heart in those folders. The doll's name is Daisy, Ethan answered without hesitating. Her favorite color is lavender, and the teacher is Mrs. Gable. I know that because I have dinner with her every night. I know that because I help with her homework. Ethan then took his phone out of his pocket. You said our home is a sham. I asked permission to show a video recorded last night, not for the court, but for the heart of this case. Gregg's lawyers shouted objections, but Judge Harrison, with a look of someone who had seen too many lies in that room, allowed it. On the small screen, Lily and Sophie appeared in the kitchen covered in flour, laughing as they tried to make pancakes with Elena's help. Ethan appeared in the background laughing too, while trying to clean Sophie's flour-covered nose. There were no professional cameras, no rehearsal. There was only the raw joy of a family that chose each other. The judge returned the phone to Ethan. He cleared his throat, his face softening for the first time. He looked at Gregg, who now seemed tiny in his arrogance. The gavel struck the sweetest sound Elena had ever heard. Mr. Gregg, the judge declared, his voice firm. The law prioritizes the well-being of the child, and well-being is not guaranteed by bank funds, but by presence and affection. Mr. Miller proved that his debts were honored with dignity, and the video proves that Mrs. Alina built a home where before there was only a house. The father's request for custody is denied. Full custody remains with the mother at the shared residence with Mr. Ethan Miller. Elena collapsed on the bench, crying with pure relief. Ethan held her, wrapping her in a hug that promised the days of sleeping in the car were over forever. Gregg left the room furious, but no one cared about him anymore. As they walked out of the courtroom into the bright afternoon sun, Elena grabbed Ethan's arm. "Wait," she said, her voice trembling with emotion. Ethan turned to face her, still holding Lily's hand while Sophie clung to his other side. "I need to say something," Elena continued, wiping tears from her cheeks. "When we started this, it was supposed to be temporary, a performance, a way to survive. But somewhere between folding laundry at 3 in the morning and watching you fix Lily's bike, somewhere between teaching Sophie to tie her shoes and you holding me when I thought I lost everything. Her voice broke. This stopped me from pretending. Ethan's eyes glistened. He gently cupped her face with both hands, his calloused thumbs brushing away her tears. Elena, it stopped being pretend for me the moment I saw you fight for your daughter with nothing but hope in your heart. I didn't offer you my house because I felt sorry for you. I offered it because I recognized something in you, the same fierce love I have for Sophie, the same refusal to give up even when the world says you should. So what happens now? Elena whispered, her heart racing. Ethan smiled, that genuine warm smile that had first broken through her defenses in the diner. Now, we stop calling it an arrangement. We stop rehearsing lines for judges and social workers. We just live as the family we've already become. Elena laughed through her tears. You mean you actually want a waitress with trust issues and a 6-year-old who talks in her sleep every single day, Ethan replied without hesitation. And you're not just a waitress, Elena. You're the woman who turned my house into a home. You're the person who taught my daughter that family isn't just about blood. It's about showing up, even when it's hard. Below them, Lily tugged on Ethan's sleeve. Does this mean you're going to be my real dad now? Ethan knelt down to her level, his eyes meeting hers with absolute seriousness. Lily, I would be honored to be your dad, if that's what you want. Lily threw her arms around his neck. Sophie joined the embrace immediately, and Elena wrapped her arms around all three of them, feeling the pieces of her shattered life finally click into place. Mr. Miller, Mrs. Thompson, a voice called out. They turned to see a woman in a professional suit approaching, Ms. Rodriguez, the social worker assigned to their case. Elena's heart clenched with fresh anxiety. I just wanted to congratulate you, Ms. Rodriguez said warmly. In my 15 years doing this work, I've seen a lot of arrangements, but what I saw in that courtroom today and what I've observed during my home visits, that's real. That's what every child deserves. She looked at Lily and Sophie. These girls are lucky to have you both. As Miss Rodriguez walked away, Elena finally allowed herself to exhale the breath she's been holding for weeks. Come on, Ethan said, taking her hand. Let's go home. That word home had never sounded so beautiful. That afternoon, the house on Oak Street was bathed in the light of the sunset. Ethan was on the porch, finally finishing the swing he had promised the girls. Elena came out with 2 glasses of lemonade, stopping to watch Lily and Sophie running through the garden with the new dog Ethan had adopted for them, a golden retriever puppy they named Miracle. She walked up to him and touched his shoulder. You know, she whispered, I asked for a miracle that night at the diner. I asked for a husband and a house so I wouldn't lose my daughter. Ethan put down the hammer, wiped his hands, and pulled her close, kissing the top of her head. And you ended up getting a stubborn carpenter and a mountain of laundry to fold, he joked. Elena smiled, feeling the warmth of his chest against hers. No, she replied, looking at the daughters who were now sisters. I got much more than that. I got a whole life. 3 months later, the house on Oak Street had transformed even further. The garden that once held scattered toys now boasted a vegetable patch that Elena tended every morning. The swing Ethan built had become the girls' favorite spot, where they spent hours giggling and making plans. Inside, the walls that once echoed with loneliness now rang with laughter, arguments over whose turn it was to pick the movie, and the comfortable sounds of a family finding its rhythm. One Saturday evening, as autumn leaves began to fall, Elena stood in the kitchen preparing dinner, real lasagna this time, the recipe Ethan's mother had taught him. She had finally enrolled in nursing school, attending classes 3 days a week while Ethan adjusted his construction schedule to be home with the girls. Sophie burst through the door, her backpack bouncing. Mom, look what I made at school. Elena's heart still skipped a beat every time Sophie called her that. She wiped her flour-covered hands and knelt down to examine the crayon, drawing a house with 4 stick figures, a dog, and a rainbow overhead. In a child's careful handwriting, it read, My family. It's beautiful, sweetheart, Elena said, hugging her tight. Lily ran in behind her sister, waving a similar drawing. I made one too, and Miss Gable said it's going to be in the school art show. Ethan appeared in the doorway, his work boots left outside, his face tired but content. He surveyed the scene, his wife covered in flour, his daughters chattering excitedly, the warm smell of dinner cooking, the dog sleeping in the corner, and felt a peace he hadn't known was possible. "How was your day?" Elena asked, standing to greet him with a kiss. "Better now," he replied, wrapping his arms around her waist. Over her shoulder, he watched Lily and Sophie already arguing playfully about whose drawing was better. "Actually, I have some news. Remember that big commercial project I bid on last month? The shopping center downtown?" Elena's eyes widened. "The one you said was a long shot?" "We got it," Ethan grinned. "It's the biggest contract Miller Construction has ever landed. We're going to be more than stable, Elena. We're going to be okay." Tears sprang to Elena's eyes, but these were different from the tears she cried in that diner so many months ago. These were tears of joy, of disbelief that life could change so completely. "We should celebrate," she said, "already ahead of you." Ethan pulled a small velvet box from his pocket. "I know we're already married on paper. I know we did this backwards, married first, fell in love later. But Elena Thompson, would you do me the honor of marrying me again? This time for real. This time because we choose each other, not because we need each other." Elena's hands flew to her mouth. The ring inside the box was a simple but beautiful band with 3 small stones. "One for each of us girls," Ethan explained softly. "Because this family, these 3 amazing females who turned my life upside down, you're my everything." "Yes," Elena sobbed. "Yes, 1,000 times yes." The girls, hearing their mother's emotional response, came running. When they saw the ring and understood what was happening, they erupted in cheers. Sophie started planning the wedding immediately. "Can I be the flower girl? Can Miracle be in it too?" While Lily hugged her mother's legs tightly. That night, after the girls were asleep and the dishes were done, Elena and Ethan sat on the porch swing he built, wrapped in a shared blanket against the cool autumn air. "Do you ever think about that night?" Elena asked quietly. "When I was sitting at that counter, completely broken, thinking I'd lost everything?" "All the time," Ethan admitted. "I think about how close I came to just minding my own business, how close we came to never happening." "What made you stand up?" Elena asked. Ethan was quiet for a moment, considering. "I lost Sarah to cancer. For a year after she died, I was just existing, going through the motions. Sophie was there too. The house was just walls and a roof. And then I heard you crying, heard you praying for a miracle, and something in me woke up. I realized I could either keep existing in my grief, or I could be someone's miracle. And maybe, in being yours, I'd find my own." Elena rested her head on his shoulder. "You saved me, Ethan." "No," he corrected gently. "We saved each other. You brought life back to this house, Elena. You gave Sophie a mother's love again. You taught me that moving forward doesn't mean forgetting the past. It means honoring it by building something beautiful in the present." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars emerge one by one in the darkening sky. From inside, they could hear the soft sounds of the girls breathing through the open window, the gentle snoring of Miracle at the foot of their beds. "Sometimes," Elena whispered, "I'm scared I'm going to wake up and this will all be a dream, that I'll be back in that car, cold and alone." Ethan squeezed her hand. "Then I'll remind you every single day that this is real, that you're home, that you're loved, that you're exactly where you belong." 6 months later, on a perfect spring morning, Elena and Ethan stood before their family and friends and renewed their vows, this time with tears of joy, with promises made from the heart, with 2 little girls as their witnesses. Greg sent a gift, but didn't attend. His new therapist had helped him realize that love isn't about possession or control. It's about wanting the best for those you care about, even if that means stepping back. He started a modest visitation schedule with Lily, and while the relationship was still healing, there was hope for the future. As Elena looked around at the gathering of Ethan's construction crew, her coworkers from the diner, neighbors from Oak Street who had become like family, her sister who had supported her through everything, she thought about how far she came from that rainy night. "Ladies and gentlemen," the officiant announced, "I present to you for the second time, but with new meaning, Mr. and Mrs. Miller." The small crowd erupted in applause. Sophie and Lily threw flower petals everywhere, far more than was necessary, and Miracle barked excitedly, tail wagging. Later, as they cut the simple homemade cake Elena had baked, Ethan pulled her close and whispered in her ear, "See, miracles do happen." Elena looked at her daughters, at the home they've built, at the man who had stood up when she needed someone most, and smiled. "Yes," she agreed, "they absolutely do." Sometimes family is not born of blood, but of the courage to reach out when the whole world decides to turn its back. The story of Alina and Ethan shows us that sometimes miracles don't come from heaven, but from the hands of a stranger who decides not to look away. If you believe that a true family is made of choice and sacrifice and not just blood, make sure you're subscribed to Soul Tales and turn on that notification bell. We share stories like this every week, stories of hope, redemption, and the beautiful ways ordinary people become extraordinary heroes. And before you go, I want to hear from you. Comment below with the word family if you stayed until the end. I want to know who the brave hearts of our community are who believe in happy endings. And tell me, have you ever been someone's miracle, or has someone been yours? Share your story in the comments. Your words might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. Until next time, keep believing in miracles, keep choosing love, and remember home isn't always where you start. Sometimes it's where someone chooses to stand beside you and say, "You're not alone anymore." This is Soul Tales, reminding you that the best stories aren't the ones we read, they're the ones we live. See you in the next one.